Reading with your kids.
Hola, ni hao, konnichiwa, assalamu alaikum, shalom, mahaba, ciao, bonjour, namaste, jumbo, bienvenidos. Hey, my name is Jedley, and this is Reading with Your Kids. We're coming to you from the book-loving neighborhood of Reedville, the loveliest neighborhood in all of Boston. We are so excited and so very grateful that you're joining us in our mission to help all families grow closer through reading. We do that by sharing fun, thoughtful, and thought-provoking conversations with fascinating people who just happen to be writing books for kids of all ages. Please consider joining us in that mission by telling all of your family and friends about the show, telling your kids, teachers, librarians, principals, even the school crossing guard, and letting them know that they can hear us on the WREB AM/FM 24/7 radio network. And they can find us on the iHeartRadio app, on Spotify, Apple Podcasts, Good Pods, Podcast Addict, Audible Music, Amazon Music, Audible, CastBox, Player FM. Wherever you find your favorite shows, you can find Reading with Your Kids. We have two amazing authors for you today. First up, Shannon Messenger is here to celebrate Keeper of the Lost Cities, the graphic novel, Part 2. Later in the show, Sarah Brannen will be joining us to celebrate Lolly on the Ice. Hey, I want to let you know that this episode of Reading with Your Kids is brought to you by Chicken Coop Chaos by Nancy Tavares. Are you ready for some barnyard fun your kids will absolutely adore? Then you've got to check out Nancy Tavares' delightful books, Chicken Coop Chaos and Chicken Coop Chaos Christmas. In the original Chicken Coop Chaos, we meet Pearl, a hen who loves peace, order, and a tidy little hen house. But when Window the Rooster barges in and decides he's not leaving, Pearl has to hatch a clever plan to take back her space. And let's just say things get hilariously chaotic. And just in time for the holidays, Chicken Coop Chaos Christmas brings even more laughs, heart, and festive feathered fun. These books are perfect for young readers, classrooms, and family read-aloud time. So flap on over to your favorite bookstore or online retailer and grab your copies of Chicken Coop Chaos and Chicken Coop Chaos Christmas today. Your kids will be clucking with joy. This episode of Reading with Your Kids is brought to you by Trumpet, the Miracle Wolf Pup series. There's a brand new book in the series, and we're so excited to tell you all about it. Trumpet becomes a mom. In this exciting book, Trumpet and Lighthawk, now a bonded pair, start their own family with their very first litter of pups. Families can read together, schools can explore the importance of wolf packs and conservation, and Trumpet fans everywhere can celebrate this milestone in her incredible journey. Grab your copy today, available on Amazon, Barnes & Noble, select bookstores, and the Wolf Conservation Center, where Trumpet and her family live. Plus, 50% of all profits go right back to supporting the Wolf Conservation Center, with more donated to Lighthawk Conservation Flying. So grab your book today and have a group haul for Trumpet and her family. Join us right now from her brand new home out in California by the ocean. Our guest is here today to celebrate the Keeper of the Lost Cities, the graphic novel Part 2. Please welcome to the show, Shannon Messenger. Shannon, how are you?
I'm doing good. Thank you so much for having me. This is always so much fun.
Delighted to have you on. Shannon and I just had a lovely conversation about allergies and new homes, and also about the Keeper of the Lost City. This is a graphic novel adaptation of the original story that came out, you were saying, 13 years ago?
Yeah, it came out in 2012. I still can't believe it's been that long. Like, it really feels like it was maybe 5 years ago, but no, somehow it was 13, which is crazy and awesome that it's still being read and still finding new readers and everything else. But wow, that was a long time ago.
Yeah. And one of the things that Shannon was saying is that most of the kids that she sees at book events who are fans of Keeper of the Lost Cities weren't even born when it first came out.
Yeah, I was at an event in Jacksonville and we started discussing that, the first book came out in 2012 and I had this moment of like, I'm just curious, like how many of you in the audience were born after 2012? And probably 75% of the kids raised their hands. And I was just like, wow, so you guys weren't even born yet when I wrote this book. That is insane and awesome, but wow.
Yeah. Well, that's one of the things about kids' books, that great kids' books last and last. I was just at a book event in a bookstore not too long ago, and I was browsing around, and there was Make Way for Ducklings, which is a book that was that I had in my library when I was a kid, and I know that was published before I was even born, which is like almost 100 years ago.
Yeah, I know. It's the same thing. Like I had books that I read as a kid that my parents read when they were kids, and now I read them to my kids. So, it's just one of those timeless things, but it's really fun to get to have the novel be sort of reimagined into a new format. It's a huge author bucket list thing for me because I love art and I have always wished that I could see my work more visual. So to get to have this like artist's interpretation of my story it's been the coolest process watching it come to life.
Yeah. Well, before we jump into the graphic novel, let's just talk about the story. Who are we going to meet in Keeper of the Lost Cities?
So it is the story of Sophie Foster, and we meet her when she is 12 years old and feeling very out of place. She is hiding the fact that she has kind of like a superpower. She can read minds. And she thinks it's because she fell and hit her head when she was 5 years old. But then this mysterious boy shows up on her class field trip and shows her that it's actually because she's not human and that she belongs to this secret world hidden on our planet called the Lost Cities, and that they've actually been looking for her entire life. And now that they've found her, she needs to come live where she belongs. And it's one of those like kind of bittersweet things. On the one hand, she's always felt very out of place. She's been hiding this ability. And so she's very excited to finally go somewhere where she might actually fit in. But it also means she has to leave behind everything she's ever known, including her family, and start all over in a place where kind of everything she knows is wrong. And so it's a big journey for her. And right around the time that she's starting to adjust, she starts to wonder, okay, so why was I hidden away? Like, why, if I'm this and I belong here, why wasn't I here? Why wasn't I born here? Why didn't I know who I am? And, it just has to do with, the kind of conspiracy that could bring on the end of the world. No big pressure, I'm just asking her to save the world. She's got it. It's fine. She's 12. She's cool.
I'm thinking back to when I was 12, and I think there are times that I fantasize that I might have to save the world someday.
It's funny. I get asked a lot if Sophie is a lot like me, and I always say she's way braver. Like there's kind of this running theme in the books of all the adults and even Sophie's friends kind of being like, hey, Sophie, don't do the thing. The thing's going to be really dangerous. The thing might even kill you. Like, hey, just don't do the thing. And Sophie's like, but I must do the thing because I must, find answers and possibly step into this role that I have. If it was me, I'd be like, you know what? You're right. I don't want to do the thing. That chair over there with that book looks really comfortable, and I'm just going to be over there if you need me.
But that's one of the beautiful things about books, is that it gives our kids chances to imagine how they might react and take that. Okay, yeah, that Shannon, you want to cuddle up and go in the corner and read a book, but in here, while you're reading Keepers of the Lost City, you can imagine yourself as Sophie.
Yeah, I mean, it's really fun writing her character because she's so, she has her moments of vulnerability, but she is so brave. And then she has this great group of friends that sort of, my very quick pitch for the series is always Lord of the Rings meets X-Men, because it's kind of fantasy creatures, but with more of a superpower kind of feel. And we have this big cast where each kid can do something different. And so it really is this kind of thing where she has all of these friends that help her out, and they each can do different things and are valuable to her, both, from a emotional standpoint, but then even in these, situations that I put her in, they, are valuable in unique ways, which is really fun to write.
Yeah. You just said the situations that you put Sophie in. Do you ever feel bad about a situation you put her in, or is it kind of mischievous, like, well, I'm going to get her now, she thinks she's so brave?
It's a little bit of both. You know, it's funny. I get asked a lot if I'd want to meet my characters, and the answer is always no. If I meet them, they'd have some words. They'd possibly be throwing things at my head for the situations that I put them in. So, you know, there's certainly times, especially as the series has gone on, where I have definitely been like, man, I don't want to let this happen. But, you know, villains have to win sometimes, and challenges arise. And sometimes it's even stepping back and letting the characters make mistakes, you know, because no one's perfect and no one does everything right. And there's been definite moments where I'm like, oh, this is such the wrong call. This is going to blow up and do all kinds of bad things. And I have to let it happen.
It's interesting. I think a lot of people, when they hear authors talking about, well, I don't want it to happen. It has to happen. And the character surprised me. And I think people sit back and go, wait a minute. You're the one on the keyboard. You're in charge. What do you mean? You got to let it happen. You don't want it to happen. I
know my mom always has these moments with me where when I'm talking and she'll be like, okay, just cutting in for a second. You know, they're not real, right? But I have to treat them like they're real. And that's really what I always try to do, is I try to just sit down with each character, whether it be the villains or the heroes or anyone in between, and just kind of think, okay, so given everything I know about what this person has been through, what they want, what they need, what are they going to do right now? And that's kind of, even when I'm at the plotting stage versus the writing stage, that's really where I start, is just looking at the characters and trying to think of them as living real entities, and letting them kind of make their own decisions, so to speak. Because it's kind of like, you know, when you have a really close friend and you hear that, you know, someone tells you, you know, I saw that friend, they were dancing in the fountain in the middle of the town square. You're going to know right away, does that sound true? Like, could you imagine that friend doing that? Or is that so not their personality that you could not imagine them doing it at all? And that's really how I am with my characters. It's like, there's these things that it's like, yeah, no, I know they would do that. Or no, I know they would never do that unless the situation forced them to, or things like that. So I definitely get taken by surprise by plot points, and really have to, again, you know, villains aren't very effective from a story standpoint if they never win, they never succeed, they never do anything. So you have to kind of strike that balance of the heroes can't always win, the villains can't always win. You have the reversals, and you sort of step back and let the story unfold.
Talking about villains, I know I've spoken to people who act, and they talk about how much fun it is to be a villain, or people who are into wrestling and they're the bad guy. And I know myself, there have been occasions when me, as a lifelong Boston Red Sox fan, am performing at a school in New York City. I'll often go up and just encourage them to boo me because I'm a Red Sox fan. And it's actually quite fun sometimes. Is it fun for you to get into the minds of the villains and write from that villain perspective?
Sometimes. I feel like the biggest challenge is that my personal philosophy to villains is that the scariest villain is a villain that if you sat down in a room with them and let them plead their case to you, that they might actually convince you that they have a point. Mm-hmm. And so it's really striking that balance of, like, sometimes I can see the villain will be giving a speech of like why they're doing what they're doing, and it's like, yeah, you know, they're kind of right. Like maybe what they're doing is wrong, but the reason they're angry about it and the thing they're reacting to, they have a very valid point. And, you know, that's really kind of where it becomes this interesting intellectual challenge of kind of really seeing the villain's side of it, and yet not falling too far into it that I'm like, you know what, let's let the villains win after all.
So now the book has been turned into 2 different graphic novels. So talk about, please, about how it's different. It's a different type of storytelling. And one of the things that I always talk about now with graphic novels, I didn't appreciate when my son was consuming them like they were, Skittles, that he was reading. Mm-hmm. And graphic novels are literature and they're stories, and it's valid reading. I supported my son reading them. I got him, took them out and we brought them home and bought them for him. But every once in a while I would go into the room and go, dude, can you please read one book without a picture in it? What do you think? You're 15 right now. So I want parents to understand that, if your kids are reading graphic novels, they're reading and celebrate that.
Yeah, I mean, they're not playing video games. They are with a book in their hands. And the Keeper graphic novels do tend to be a little bit more text heavy. That's actually why it is split into two, because the book itself is, book one is almost 500 pages. I think it's like 484 in the hardcover. And initially when we had talks about, like at the very, very early stages, there were talks about, we'll probably have to just take some stuff out so that we can condense this down into one graphic novel. And that was actually why I said, I don't think that I should be the one to write the adaptation. I don't think that I could be objective enough as far as what needs to be taken out. And I would think it would be better to have someone else do that and then just have me give notes on it. And so we did that. We hired somebody, and then kind of the general consensus was, yeah, we need to leave most of this in and split it into two books. And there's still definite changes. What's really probably going to frustrate the person who adapted it, who did a brilliant job, Selena Friend. I've gotten to meet with her. She's wonderful. Is that one of the things I said was, there's a lot of like jokes and one-liners that, like when you go through the Kindle edition, you can see they've been highlighted a million times. And I really feel like we need to try to keep those in. And so she worked really hard to keep a lot of the direct lines from the book in. And then when I got it and I saw, the way it was interplaying with the art, it was like, that line doesn't work as well in this format. Like it would actually be better to rewrite it. So I ended up going in and rewriting a lot of the jokes, a lot of the big moments and stuff, reworking them so that it played out better in this new format. So after all that painstaking effort she went to find all those lines and jigsaw puzzle them in, I went in and rewrote them all. Sorry, Selena.
Yeah. All that work. Never mind.
I mean, she still did a great job of breaking it down into different scenes and then different panels because she really was creating, the instruction manual for the artist of like what you draw for this panel and what you draw for this panel. So she did a brilliant job with that. And then I kind of went in and changed all the text in the text bubbles.
What was that like, as you were, editing's probably not the word, but, looking, consulting and offering advice, reading her adaptation? Was it difficult without the pictures there?
I didn't catch that a lot of it wasn't playing out when there weren't the pictures. It was one of those things where when I read, because I got it first as a text format and I read that and was like, yeah, this is great. Gave just a few notes and off it went to the artist. And then when I got the art, it was just funny how a lot of times things like that, it was so clear in the book that Sophie like knows she's being teased and is kind of smiling about it or something like that. Like, it didn't come across that way in the page. The joke suddenly seemed like more like she was being insulted and her reaction seemed more like she was mad about it. And so what was really a lighthearted moment suddenly didn't feel lighthearted anymore. And it wasn't anything that the artist did wrong. It wasn't anything that the adaptation did wrong. It was just once you put those two visuals together, it wasn't quite working. And so it was like, okay, let's go in and try a different joke instead and put it in right here and see if that suddenly kind of changes the mood of the scene. And it was amazing how often it did, it like just as a flip of the text and suddenly the art had a completely different interpretation to it.
I've talked to illustrators here a bunch of times. We had a series, we did a short series on YouTube called Drawing with Your Kids. And we'd invite illustrators to come in and teach us how to draw their character. And so often they would draw, there's a circle and there's a triangle here and that, and this is a dragon. And I'm looking going, ain't a dragon. And then one line, one mark, and oh, the dragon's there. It's funny how art is like that, as you were talking about just a little bit of change of the text, and boom, it works.
Well, and especially because we're dealing with fantastical stuff, and sometimes it was also that like you couldn't tell what was happening in the scene. You couldn't understand just from what text was there, like what exactly Sophie's doing right now, what manifestation of her power is going on, all of that kind of, or what the villains are doing, or those kind of things. It's like we'd see someone with glowing hands and it's like, okay, but what is that? And because I wanted very much to, obviously I knew there was going to be a huge part of my existing readership that loves seeing these characters come alive, that would be like, I need the illustrated, graphic novel version. But I also know that the series is very thick books, and there might be kids that are choosing not to read them because they don't think that they like big, thick books with no pictures in them. And so it might be, getting a new readership there. And I didn't want them to be confused going, wait a minute, I don't understand what's happening here. Like, I didn't want it to be that you only knew what Sophie was doing if you'd already read the Keeper novel and knew, oh, okay, she's using her telepathy right now. That's why her head is glowing, or things like that, All
right, cool. What's it like meeting the new readers and the kids who are being introduced to the story just through the graphic novels?
It's really cool, especially because it feels like it's kind of opening a new doorway. A lot of times you get more of those reluctant readers, and to see them, and then because we're only on the book 1 of adaptation, then they do decide to go on and try the actual prose version of book 2 and continue on with the story. And it's like, oh wow, it kind of opened a door for them a little bit. So that's what, when I wrote this series, I wrote it more for 12-year-old me. I was that kid that would go to the library and check out a stack of books this thick and be done with it in a week and be back at the library checking out my next stack of books this thick. And so I kind of figured it probably wasn't going to be a series that would be reaching to those reluctant readers, that reluctant readers would probably look at it and go, why would I pick up a book that's this thick when I could pick up a book that's this thick? But I actually hear quite often that it is the book that got them into reading, and which is the best compliment a children's author can get, pretty much, is, wait, so you fell in love with reading because of my story? Life complete.
Well, I know I consume most of my reading through audiobooks these days, and I do look at how long a book is, and I am much more likely to buy a book that's 15 or 20 hours than to get a book that's 7 or 8.
Same, and that was even as a kid. Like, I was drawn to the thick ones, partially because I knew that it meant that, I wouldn't run out of if I was taking home, 6 books that were each this thick from the library versus 6 books that were each this thick, I knew it was going to get me through the week. But what also is really cool about a longer format is that you get to go on a bigger journey. Mm-hmm. You get to dive deeper into the world. You get to know more people. There's just more there. And so for me, that was always the draw, was that I get to, if I find characters I like, I want to spend as much time with them as possible. Mm-hmm. I don't want to just have a short little adventure and then send them on their way. I want to spend time with them. So obviously there's all different kinds of readers, but that was really kind of my sweet spot as a kid and what I kind of aimed for.
Yeah. Well, that's exactly how I feel about reading with your kids, because I don't want to have a 5-minute conversation with an author. I want to get in there and really kind of sit down and get to know the person in their work. I'm curious, if I had taken the time as a dad, instead of going into my son and going, dude, read a book without a picture, if I had gotten myself my own copy of that graphic novel and sat down and read it, co-read the book with my kid, and then talked about it as we were going to school or football practice, whatever, I imagine I would have some really great conversations. What kind of conversations do you think families can have if they're co-reading the graphic novel part 2?
I hear that actually a lot. I get a lot at my events. I get a lot of parents that are saying, my kid insisted that I read this so that they could talk to me about it, or they wouldn't stop reading it and I wanted to find out what was so interesting, or that kind of thing. And, really the second half of the book is where it all starts to come together. The first part of the book, Sophie's just sort of going through and going, well, that's kind of weird, and that's kind of weird, and this is kind of weird, and okay, maybe it's all, she keeps raising it to the grown-ups, and the grown-ups keep saying, don't worry, it's all fine, you're just misunderstanding things. The second part is when it starts to be like, no, there's really something weird here, and that's when you really start to get into those kind of the deeper mysteries of the lost cities. So it was really I love the first half of the book. It's very much, sort of lots of wonder and just kind of discovery. The second half is when it all starts to be wow, it's getting real now. This is, there's big stuff going on in the Lost Cities. It's not just a wonderful, magical, shining place. Like there's problems and there's villains and there's stuff, So it was really, really cool to see those come to life and then it really starts to bring up the mystery of who Sophie is and so getting to have parents kind of guess, okay, so what is Sophie's role and what is all of this? And there's kind of a bait and switch of you think someone's the villain and then maybe they're not. We don't know by the end of it, and all of those conversations too.
Yeah, that's great. In the series, how many books are there in the series right now?
So I have kind of a funky numbering system because we did a book 8.5 and we did a book 9.5. So we are up through book 9.5, but that is technically 11 books in the series. And I am working on what we're calling book 10, but it's technically book 12. Yeah. So the 0.5s, it does make sense when you read it in the context. The books are limited to Sophie's POV. So it's third person, but we are only in scenes if Sophie is there. And as the series goes on, certain other characters start to become very important, and we kind of need to see some scenes of what they're doing that Sophie isn't part for. So that's why we have these 0.5 books. So they're absolutely essential to the series. They're canon. They're all of that. But because they're not in Sophie's POV, I felt like we should do something to differentiate them. And so they're called 0.5s.
Okay. So you didn't want to just mess with the editors. There was a reason behind it.
Yeah, exactly. I mean, it is also fun to mess with the editors, but.
And are we thinking of adapting all of the books, whether it's 10 or 12 or however many 0.5s we're going to have in there?
I mean, I hope so. It's one of those things where the graphic novels are a very tedious process. So the next one, it takes illustrators a long time. The next one probably won't be for another couple of years. And it also kind of depends on my publisher deciding if they want to or not. But, the series has been pretty successful for them. So it seems like they hopefully, knock on wood, we've got to find something to knock on. We'll continue with it. But if they do, it will be most likely a couple years out, just because the graphic novel has to be adapted and then the art needs to get started and all that.
Any idea how many illustrations are in part 2?
Oh my goodness. Let's see. There's probably 300 pages and at least like 5 or 6 illustrations per page. So yeah, it was a Herculean task for the illustrator to take on. And, that's why we actually have 2 different illustrators for each of the parts, because part 2, they had to get started on before they could even start on part 1. I finished part 1 because of just the lag time between them.
That's incredible. I had a conversation once with an illustrator of a graphic novel, and she said, I drew these characters really simple because I knew I was going to have to do it 1,000 times, and I didn't.
Mm-hmm. I have so much respect for them. That was my dream job when I was a kid, was that I wanted to be an animator. And I slowly realized that I don't draw that way. Like, even my stick figures don't look the same. If I try to draw, like, if I try to recreate something, I can't do it. And I know obviously there are little tricks that they use, like you were saying, like they use the circle and the line through it and all of that. And I tried to wrap my brain around all of that, but it just I am the kind of person that the way I draw is like, if I'm looking at something, I can render it and that's it. I can't like create something in my mind, and I certainly can't then create 1,000 different versions of that same something from every angle. Mad respect for anyone who can. That is an amazing talent.
Yeah, absolutely. We should tell everybody where they can go to find out more about Keepers of the Lost City, the novels, the graphic novels, and find out more about you.
So there's keeperoftheLostCities.com. There's also my personal author website, ShannonMessenger.com. And then I have social media. I tend to be most on Instagram, which links to that are on my website as well. I'm not online as much as I'd like anymore now that I have a 2-year-old and a 4-year-old and lots of deadlines. But I still try to keep my fans up to date with lots of anything important all goes on my Instagram first. And then I have a newsletter as well.
That is awesome. Well, as much as you've helped people enjoy the journeys of Keepers of the Lost City, I wish you great luck in your new journey as a mom with 2 little kids. It's a beautiful journey. You're going to have a blast.
They'll sleep someday, right?
Sleep is overrated.
Yeah, that's what I've been telling myself for 4 years.
We've had a great time speaking to the author of Keeper of the Lost Cities. The graphic novel Part 2 is available. Our guest has been Shannon Messenger. Shannon, thanks so much for being on Reading with Your Kids.
Thank you so much for having me.
This episode is brought to you by OnceUponADance.com. Take storytelling to a whole new level. With Once Upon a Dance, your child will do more than just listen. They'll move, imagine, and connect. It's a literary adventure and a performance all in one. From graceful turns to energetic leaps, each story brings an immersive experience that engages both body and mind. Whether your child enjoys unicorns, bats, zombies, or cats, Once Upon a Dance has a Dance It Out story just for them. Celebrate joyful movement and visit OnceUponADance.com or find them at your favorite social media platform. Get ready, adventure fans. Toby Baxter is back. In I Heart Riverhome, the 4th thrilling book in the Adventures of Toby Baxter series, written by Tim Wright, 13-year-old Toby dives into his most unexpected quest yet. He's battling trolls, navigating the sandpit of love, and getting stuck with an LOVE compass. But when the girl of his dreams, Rainey, is kidnapped, Toby must summon more courage than ever before. All 4 books in the Adventures of Toby Baxter series have been honored as Reading with Your Kids certified great reads, each packed with fast-paced action, humor, and heart. So grab your copy of I Heart Riverhome today and join Toby on an unforgettable journey through Riverhome, where every page is an adventure. Join us right now from the beautiful state of Massachusetts. Our guest is here today to celebrate her new picture book about something everybody here in Massachusetts loves to do, skating. The name of the book is Lolly on the Ice. Please welcome to the show, Sarah Brannen. Hey, Sarah, how are you?
I am very well. Thank you for having me. And it's a nice, really cold day today. So
it really is a nice cold day.
So all the ponds are freezing.
Yes. In fact, I was hiking around Houghton's Pond yesterday and could see the middle of the pond that's where all the ducks were because that's still water. But all around the edges was starting to freeze. And, I want to go somewhere in the Caribbean right now.
It's really mean today. Oh, well,
So,
we love winter. We love winter.
Yeah, I'll just keep telling myself that. And tell us about Lolly on the Ice, please.
Well, Lolly on the Ice is about a little girl who loves to figure skate, and she skates all the time. But if she feels like someone's watching her, she just gets stiff and can't move and can't do anything. And she thinks she'd like to try to be in the show at the club where she skates, but she's so nervous she can't even move when she tries to audition. So they cast her as a snowman who just stands in the back and doesn't skate. And finally, some other kids need help, and she realizes that if she gets brave enough, she could do it to help a couple other kids. And she does go out on the spotlights wearing a sparkly dress and is able to perform for the first time. And it's completely based on myself. I love to skate. I am not particularly good at it. I take lessons, doesn't help. And if there's somebody, sometimes people just walk by and stop and watch you for a minute, just not for any reason. But whenever they do that, I just feel like I can't do anything, and I'm even worse than I usually am. And so I've never skated in a show. I've never put on a sparkly dress, and I never will. But Lolly is sort of my dream of what I might have done.
Yeah, kind of having stage fright for a figure skater.
I'm sorry, you cut out for a second there, but yeah, stage fright. I think that the skaters who do well in competition have figured out how to manage it. It's a very, very difficult sport where you're just dealing with microscopic issues of balance, and you got to be able to have nerves of steel. And if people can't do that, they can't continue. So I admire them all so much. Even the person who finishes last at a competition is so good. So
They really are. I mean, figure skating is it's a beautiful art, and it takes incredible athletic ability and discipline, and because you're dealing not only with the athletics and then the dance and the choreography, but you're kind of dealing with science at the same time. There's a lot of physics involved in it.
Although there's a huge amount of science in recovery. It's very demanding physically, and the skaters work with trainers and do a tremendous amount in how to keep their muscles functioning properly. I think the physics of it is not as relevant as you might think. It is true that physics is a part of it, but really you just have to train your body to know exactly how hard to pull in to land 3 or 4 revolutions. And you can't be thinking about the exact physics of that while you're doing it. Sorry, go ahead. I was a skating journalist for a number of years, so I have interviewed hundreds of figure skaters and watched them practice and talk to them about these things.
I'm always amazed at when they're in a spin and they're just spinning around, and then it gets faster. And I'm like, how does it get faster? They haven't done anything that, it's not like they pushed off to start the rotations faster. It just keeps going, and I'm amazed. Those wonderful super fast spins that they used to call blur spins, they don't really score that much in it's not the new scoring system, the 25 years old scoring system. And so we don't really see those anymore. I think it's a shame because it excited the audience. It's so crazy to see people spinning super fast like that. But unfortunately, it's not part of the sport anymore. The Olympics are coming up in February. So I presume everybody will be watching and thinking about it, skating and talking about skating. Yeah. I never did any kind of figure skating, although I did wear a pair of figure skates once. My hockey skates weren't available for whatever reason, and someone said, well, put these on, and I didn't know there was a difference. And then I cut that little pointy thing in the front of the skate, and boy, that was an unfortunate mistake. That one hurt.
Went right down on your knee, didn't you?
Right down on my head.
On your head? Oh, yikes. The toe picks. Frankly, I've never dared put on hockey skates. They have a much deeper curve of the blade than figure skates do, and it looks terrifying to me. So there you go. I've fallen terribly and broken several bones skating. It's a dangerous sport.
It really is. A few years ago, my niece, she had never seen ice until she got here to the United States. And in 8th grade, someone said to her, "Do you want to play hockey?" And she said, "Yeah." "What is it?" And she went and saw the skating rink, and came to me and said, I'm going to play hockey right now, and I need somebody to skate with. And I said, well, good luck with that. I haven't skated for 30 years, but I'm sure you're going to have a lot of fun. And she said, no, we're going to have a lot of fun. And so I got the skates back out, and we did. We had a lot of fun. There was this one day, it was during the summer, and for some reason, we were the last two on the ice. We had the ice to ourselves for a half an hour. And we played tag. Well, she played tag. I chased her around the ice. It was the best time I had. I remember going home and telling my wife, and just was like, that was so much fun. And she's like, you're an old man. You shouldn't be skating like that. You're going to have a heart attack.
It's really nice. Sometimes the rink where I skate in has sessions for old people like me. And sometimes I'm the only one there. And I absolutely love it to just be alone and play your music and do whatever you want. And we grew up skating on ponds when I was a kid. Never had a lesson as a child.
Right.
And I used to be able to do that. There was a pond in our backyard, and I could just go skate around. And that's where this book comes from. Just slide back to my book for a second.
Yeah.
It really, it shows some scenes of Lolly skating on a pond outside her house, there's a dog running around, and that's the dog we had growing up, and it's the little pond that was outside our house, and it was it was a precious part of my childhood. I love to think about it, so I was sort of reaching for that.
Yeah. Well, it sounds like you hit it out of the park with the sentiment, and we've had a lot of authors come on and talk about, this was me when I was a kid. I think you're the first one that has said, yeah, my main character is me now.
Oh, that's interesting. Well, I've been trying to write a figure skating picture book for 20 years because I started out, I was an artist first, and then I really realized I wanted to write and illustrate children's books, and I was very focused on that. But at the same time, I loved skating, and I was going to watch skating competitions and becoming a skating journalist, and I just thought I need to do these two things together and write a picture book about a skater. And it was surprisingly hard. I had two other drafts that I had developed and had gone out to publishers and never got picked up. And this was my third major attempt. And I finally just thought I should just reach inside and write about myself. I had written about a competitive skater, and I'd written a whole, just a fictional story that I completely made up. And this time I just reached for the truth, and maybe that's the key to
I was going to ask, do you think it's because this book had to be written? There was part of you that said, I need to write this story here. Maybe that part of you conspired to have those books not be as perfect as Lolly is.
Maybe. Who knows? As an author and an illustrator, it takes a long time to put together a draft. I have to do a dummy book of the whole book with sketches at least and some pieces of finished art. And so it's at least 6 months for any draft that I put out. And yet, like everybody, sometimes you do all that work and it just doesn't work out. It just either I know it doesn't work out, so I never send it, or sometimes my agent and I think it's great, but can't find an editor who likes it. And so it's just part of the process. Yeah. And who knows? Yeah, maybe this was the book I was meant to write, and it just took me an awfully long time to figure it out.
Now, do you see Lolly possibly appearing in more stories that you create?
I'd love that. I have not at this time submitted anything like that. There is a story that I've thought about, but I lost a lot of time this year. I finished the illustrations for Lolly at the end of last year, I think, maybe earlier in the year. And then the Supreme Court took a case that was centered on my first book, Uncle Bobby's Wedding, and that happened in January, and that really took the whole first 6 months of the year. It was unbelievably distracting and upsetting, and I wasn't able to work at all. So when I finally got back to work in the second half of this year, I had another project that was at the top of the pile. But yeah, perhaps if my editor is game, I'd love to write more about skating.
Yeah, that would be wonderful. For an author illustrator, I ask this usually if I have an author illustrator on, what comes first for you, the images or the story?
That's such an interesting question. And I have thought about it, and we author illustrators talk about it a lot. For me, the story has to come first. I have tried. Sometimes I've done an illustration just for fun, and without the story. And I thought, oh, this is really appealing. This would be great. I need to figure out how to tell a story about these characters. And I've never pulled it off. I can think about what it might look like, but I have to have the story has to be strong, and the character has to be strong, and it has to work. Or I can't do it. I've tried really hard. It doesn't mean that I necessarily complete the 17th draft of the manuscript before I start drawing. I might very well be sketching at the same time, but those sketches are just sort of floating around. I don't sit down and really work out the dummy until I've got the bones of the story in place. And then once you move on to the sketches, there have to be changes to the manuscript. It becomes really obvious once you look at the page turns and the settings. You can't have an entire book take place in one room. You have to have some variation in where you are. I mean, I said that might not be true. There's probably someone who could do a great book set in one room, but I do try to have some variety. And in fact, with Lolly on the Ice, she's on the ice in an awful lot of the scenes. It almost always takes place with her either on a pond or in a rink or just having finished skating. And so I just played with the light and the time of day and have scenes in the sun and scenes under the moon and tried to make some interest in what it looks like.
Yeah. This book seems like it would be a great book for any family, really, because even if your kid's not interested in skating, they might be interested in ballet or music or some sort of thing that they really love, but they're intimidated to show anybody their skill.
I hope so. It's about that kind of anxiety, the performance anxiety that I think is a factor for almost everybody as you grow up. That some kids are scared to even talk on the phone to someone. And certainly standing up and performing in front of a crowd, it's very scary. And we sort of all have to learn how to do that if we're going to go forth and function. Even in class, you have to stand up and read reports or talk in front of the class, and we have to face our fears. So I hope that the kids will relate to that, even if they're not skaters.
In high school, I remember as a freshman, I think, in high school, I got up and I had to recite something. And at the end, I got through it. I was, as we say here in Boston, I was wicked nervous. And I got through it. And my teacher, who was a Olympic swimmer, actually came up and he stood next to me and he looked up at the ceiling without saying anything. And I'm like, what are you doing? And he goes, well, I'm trying to look to see where you put the notes because you were just staring at the ceiling the whole time you were up here reciting it. So you must have it up there somewhere.
That's very interesting. Well, don't they say that when they did a poll that people's second greatest fear was death and their first greatest fear was public speaking?
Yes.
I don't know if that's true, but I feel like I've heard that.
Oh, absolutely. Yeah, absolutely. And what's interesting is I went on to have spend 35, actually getting close to 40 years performing in elementary and middle and high schools around the country. And now it's just second nature. It's like you can come up to me now and go, you need to go out on stage. All right, no problem. And just flip that switch. So it's hard for me to put my head back in that, in that moment as a freshman, being afraid of reciting this poem.
It's absolutely the only way to get over it is to just keep doing it. That eventually it goes away. I'm also a singer, not as much now as I used to be, but I used to perform with the Boston Symphony Orchestra in their chorus, the Tanglewood Festival chorus. So I've had a huge amount of performance experience. but not on skates, but but on stage. And I call on that if I ever feel anxious. It's a very familiar feeling to be facing a big audience. Although once I had a small solo in a piece we did with Seiji Ozawa conducting, and I did it, but I've rarely been so proud of myself to sing these three little measures of something on that stage in that hallowed hall. And I really had anxiety beforehand. I just took a deep breath and did it.
Well, that is quite an accomplishment. Of Symphony Hall is a very hallowed hall. Talk about the performers who have displayed their artistry there. I mean, the list goes on and on.
Oh, yes. It was amazing. And I got to work with some of them. I mean, I was just in the chorus and they were out in front, but to share the stage with these tremendous performers was really thrilling. It's clear to me that I like that when I became involved with skating, I started as a fan, but I wanted to be closer to the sport. So I just sort of found a way to become a journalist so that I could be backstage, so I could, talk to the performers and really have the chance to ask people the questions that I wondered about. I like that. I like to go all in when I like something.
Good for you. Good for you. Any plans on going to Milan for the Olympics?
I am not, for various reasons. I don't really do the journalism anymore. I write an occasional article, but not enough to have gotten a credential as a media person. So I'll be watching on television or online, where it will be live on Peacock. And that's so nice. When I was growing up, of course, you just watched whatever they showed you whenever they showed it. And it's fantastic to be able to watch the whole thing live now. Yeah. So yes, I've blocked out all those days on my calendar. I'm busy those days. I need to be in front of the computer.
Well, let's tell everybody where they can go to find out more about Lolly on the Ice and find out more about you.
My website is sarahbrannen.com. So all you have to know is how to spell my name, SarahBrannen.com. And I do my best to keep it updated. And the book, people often ask me where they can get my book, which seems like a funny question to me. So, in bookstores.
And we encourage fans to not only buy and support their indie and local bookstores, but also go to your local public library. Skate up to your librarian and say, "Hey, can you bring Lolly on the Ice to this library?"
Oh yes, I love libraries. Librarians are my heroes, especially these days with all the book bans and the things they're dealing with. They're just tremendous people, and I'm in my library at least once a week. I love libraries.
We've had a great time speaking to the author and illustrator of Lolly on the Ice. It's the new picture book from our guest, Sarah Brannen. Hey, Sarah, thanks so much for being on Reading with Your Kids.
Thanks for having me. I really enjoyed it.
We hope you've enjoyed this episode of Reading with Your Kids and will join us for the next exciting episode of the show. Hey, if this episode made you smile or gave you something to think about, please consider sharing a link to the show with someone you love. Speaking of love, we would love for you to leave us a 5-star review wherever you found this podcast. We'd love for you to subscribe to the show. We'd also love for you to connect with us on social media. So much love to go around. Facebook.com/readingwithyourkids, @readingwithyourkids, on Instagram, @JedleyMagic, on X. Our YouTube channel, youtube.com/readingwithyourkids. And of course, our website, readingwithyourkids.com. You're the author of a fantastic children's book. You absolutely want to get to readingwithyourkids.com. Click on the author's click here button up at the top of the page. Find out how you can be a guest and tell thousands of Kidlet fans all over the world about your fantastic children's book. I want to thank the folks who made today's show so wonderful, starting with our guest, Shannon Messenger. Please be sure to check out Keeper of the Lost Cities, the graphic novel, Part 2. And Sarah Brannen, please be sure to check out Lolly on the Ice. I want to thank my team, Chris Doherty, Fatima Khan, I want to thank my beautiful wife for all the support and love she gives to me, but most of all, we all want to thank you. You are amazing. You're working hard, you're taking care of your kids, and still, you're finding time to make the world a more beautiful, more loving, more empathetic place, and you're doing that every single time you read with your kids. I'll be looking for you in the next episode of Reading with Your Kids.